Good morning, everyone. I thought I'd start this morning with a Taizé chant, and if you know it, sing along. I'm only going to sing it once, though. Laudate Dominum, laudate Dominum, omnes gentes, alleluia. Laudate Dominum, laudate Dominum, omnes gentes, alleluia. So I wanted to share that this morning, excuse my morning voice, mainly because of the words. Sing praise and bless the Lord. Sing praise and bless the Lord, peoples, nations. I felt that it was appropriate for this morning's reading. I haven't chosen the whole of our lectionary reading, but just one verse. And it comes at the end of Moses having given the people the 10 Commandments, which I kind of see as a form of human rights, really. That's what the 10 Commandments are really about behaving well with one another. But the verse that I've chosen to share this morning is Exodus 20:18. When all the peoples witnessed the thunder and lightning, the sound of the trumpet and the mountains smoking, they were afraid and trembled and stood at a distance. Now, what I've asked Carrie to share this morning is a picture that I took. It was exactly 1 year ago in the French Alps. It's a place called Mer de Glace. Now, if you look at the picture, you can't really fathom the depth of the valley that we're looking at. It's a glacier, or what is left of a glacier. If you look carefully at the picture, you'll see that at the very top of the mountains, and they are mountains, is a tree line. And about the year 2000, that is where the glacier came up to. The railway that you take to view the glacier, and it's quite a tourist attraction, is at the very top of that. And from about 1910 until 2000, you can kind of see where the glacier had come down ever so slightly. But from 2000 onwards, it's a desert. It's not been able, the tree line hasn't been able to keep up with the deforestation, or the clearing of the glacier. It's not deforestation, is it? It's a desert. And it's really hard to describe the experience of standing at the end of that valley, because every few minutes the mountain cracks, and it's a tremendous crack, and you can feel it in your feet and in your bones, and it runs through your body, and it's across the valley, and you can feel and hear that crack, and it feels like the mountain is crying, is screaming out. And what happens then is a great rockfall comes down. And that's what prevents the trees from growing. It's what prevents the vegetation, because it's cracking. Why is that happening? It's happening because the ice has melted. It's gone away. These glaciers are what provide water for the whole of the valleys underneath the Alps. So when you speak to the cattle farmers, the cattle ranchers in the Alps, you discover that there's a drought. Now, when you travel through the Alps, it doesn't look like there's a drought happening. It looks fine, it looks green, but actually pastures are drying up and there's not enough feed for the cattle. So they're having to slaughter the cattle sooner than they would have. Vegetation is going in the Alps, and it's going dramatically. So when I read that verse about the mountains smoking, cracking, that's what I thought of, is that glacier. And why is it happening? It's happening because of global warming. A few days after that, I went to visit the mission to the seafarers in Dunkirk, and I was given access to the ports, to the docks in Dunkirk. Now, they're not like docks that you would have imagined from the films or from Hollywood, where there's lots of people taking cargo off of ships, or even, big machines lifting, bits of cargo in a net. No, what happens now is massive machines, empty, huge mountains of cargo from massive cargo ships. And it only takes about 9 to a dozen men to look after these machines. And it's back-breaking and soul-destroying work because they're just at the top of these huge machines. And when you go through these miles and miles and miles of docks, what you see are mountains of coal and mountains of iron ore, and it's all being fed into refineries. So there's steel manufacturing that takes place on those docks, and oil refineries. And you see these massive rolls of steel also waiting to be shipped out. And the end product of the oil refinery is plastic pellets. So it's the oil industry that's driving our use of plastics. We wrap things in plastic now that we never used to wrap before. You buy a card at the stationery and it's wrapped in plastic. It's supposed to keep it safe, but you don't really have to have every single card wrapped in plastic. You just put it safely in your bag. Every tiny little thing is wrapped in plastic, and that plastic is poisoning our landfill, poisoning our waters, poisoning our oceans. All of this isn't an act of God. It's an act of humanity. We are the ones that are causing the droughts. We are the ones that are causing the mountains to scream and the oceans to be clogged with plastic. This is coming from us. Now, I'm not somebody that believes that the virus is an act of God. It's a natural phenomenon. It was foreseen. We've had pandemics before. We know what to do. We have the science. We don't have the vaccine for this particular virus, but we do know what to do. What we did is ignore the predictions that this is going to come again, and we have to look after ourselves. So when I think about the virus, I think our response to it is the key to our survival. Do we decide that some people are expendable, or that money counts more than people? Do we want our freedom of movement at the expense of others? Or do we collectively curtail our freedoms so that others may have life? I mean, we hear how in New Zealand the virus is not spreading anymore. And why is that? Because their government took human life as the precedent over anything else. It was human life. And I think that's our challenge to ourselves in the UK and in many, many other nations. Human rights, as I mentioned with regard to the 10 commandments from Moses, human rights are something that are held in balance. My right to certain freedoms should not negatively affect anybody else. What is our treasure? Is our treasure human life? Is our treasure the most vulnerable? Or is it in gold? It's cold comfort. A good friend of mine is a chaplain at Hertfordshire University, Fiona, and she has asked her students and the staff of the university to consider 4 questions. How have we responded to the lockdown and to the virus? What has gone well? and what hasn't gone well, and how will we respond differently? I think these are key questions that any of us could ask, maybe keep a diary of. How have I responded? What's gone well? What hasn't gone well? And what would I do differently in the future? And this is really all about not only our own survival, but the survival of people that we love, the vulnerable in our nations and in our countries, in the world. And it all goes back to that command of God, the first commandment, to love God with all our heart, all our soul, all our mind, and all our strength, and to love our neighbours as ourselves. How well do we love our most vulnerable neighbour? I'd like to finish with a prayer from the Iona Abbey worship book. And it's based on Ephesians 4. Dear Lord, there is no pain in our hearts or in our planet that you do not know. You have touched the lowest places on earth. Teach us to grieve with you, O Christ, the loss of all the beauty that is being killed. There's no place in the heavens that cannot be touched by your resurrection presence, for you fill all things. Give us strength in your victory over death, to grow into your way of love, which does not despair, but keeps sowing seeds of hope and making signs of wholeness. Under Christ's control, all the different parts of the body fit together, and the whole body is held together by every joint with which it is provided. Teach us to know our interconnectedness with all things. Teach us to grow with each other and all living creatures through love. Laudate Dominum, laudate Dominum, omnes gentes, alleluia. Laudate Dominum, laudate Dominum, omnes gentes, alleluia. Bless you, and may peace be with you. Amen.